Autism. For parents, it's a word that brings questions, worries, and sometimes fear. Welcome to Parents Questions and Answers Hub, the channel where we take your toughest parenting questions and answer them with thorough, carefully researched evidence from the world's most trusted health experts. For years, two suspects have stood at the center of the autism conversation: vaccines and a simple fever medicine called paracetamol or Tylenol. But what if the story that spread across the world was built on shaky ground? What if millions of parents were led to believe something that science has tested again and again and found to be untrue? Stay with me, because we're about to uncover how one doctor's fraudulent study sparked a global scare, what some of the largest health studies in history actually revealed, and why myths can survive even when the evidence is overwhelming. The year was 1998. A British doctor named Andrew Wakefield published a paper in the medical journal The Lancet. The study involved only 12 children. It claimed that 9 of them developed autism shortly after receiving the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the MMR shot. The media ran with it. Headlines screamed. Parents panicked. But here's what the headlines left out. There was no control group. The study could not prove causation. And because more than 90% of children in the UK had received the MMR vaccine at that time, it was expected that many children with autism would have been recently vaccinated purely by coincidence. The paper also claimed a link between gut problems and autism. But in those children, the gut symptoms appeared after the autism symptoms, the opposite of what the hypothesis suggested. Then came the bombshell. Investigations revealed misconduct. The children in the study had been handpicked. Some underwent unnecessary, invasive procedures. And Wakefield himself had financial conflicts. He was being paid by lawyers suing vaccine companies. And he even held a patent for a rival measles vaccine. The Lancet retracted the paper. Wakefield lost his medical license. Leading health authorities now call his work fraudulent. But by then, the damage was done. And here's where the story gets even more powerful. The timing of autism symptoms made the myth feel real. Autism signs often become noticeable between 12 and 24 months of age. That is the very same window when children receive vaccines like the MMR. Parents, desperate for answers, saw patterns where none existed. Add to this another factor. Autism diagnoses were rising in the 1990s, not because of vaccines, but because doctors had broadened the criteria and were better at recognizing autism. Still, to parents watching the numbers go up, it looked like something new was causing harm. Wakefield was charismatic. His message was simple, and simple answers spread fast. Celebrities joined in. Anti-vaccine groups amplified it. Soon, fear became louder than science. And yet, behind the noise, researchers around the world were already running the studies that would settle the question. Scientists didn't just ignore the claim. They tested it on a scale far larger than Wakefield ever attempted. In Denmark, researchers studied more than 500,000 children. Their conclusion: vaccinated children were no more likely to develop autism than unvaccinated children. A meta-analysis published in JAMA Pediatrics pooled data from 1.8 million children. It found no causal link between autism and the MMR vaccine, no link with thimerosal, the mercury-based preservative once used in some vaccines, and no link with the overall number of vaccines children received. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has funded or conducted at least 9 major studies since 2003. Not one found an association between vaccines and autism. And in 2025, the World Health Organization issued a statement: large, high-quality studies from many countries have all reached the same conclusion. Vaccines do not cause autism. Here's a thought experiment. If vaccines or preservatives like thimerosal were causing autism, then when thimerosal was removed from childhood vaccines in the early 2000s, autism rates should have dropped. But they didn't. Diagnoses kept rising because awareness improved, not because vaccines were the culprit. So what is the bottom line? The American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the WHO, Johns Hopkins, and virtually every major health body agree: vaccines do not cause autism. But here's where the story takes another turn. If vaccines aren't to blame, Why do some still look at paracetamol or Tylenol as a possible suspect? This is the medicine nearly every parent has given their child at some point. It's the most common pain and fever reliever during pregnancy. Doctors recommend it because alternatives like aspirin and ibuprofen can be harmful in pregnancy. But several large studies raised eyebrows. One long-term study following tens of thousands of women, the Nurses' Health Study 2, reported that mothers who used more acetaminophen during pregnancy had children with slightly higher rates of autism or ADHD. The Boston Birth Cohort, another major U.S. study, reported similar findings. On the surface, it seemed to suggest a link. But here's the catch. These are observational studies. They show correlation, not causation. And just when the story seemed to tilt against Tylenol, researchers uncovered something crucial. Why were some mothers taking more acetaminophen in the first place? Often because they had more fevers or infections during pregnancy. And untreated high fevers are already known to raise risks to a baby's brain development. That means the underlying illness could explain the association, not the medicine. Then came the game changer. A Swedish study in 2024 looked at 2.5 million children. This time, researchers compared siblings. One pregnancy with higher acetaminophen use, another with lower use. If the medicine were the cause, differences should have shown up between siblings. But they didn't. Once genetics and shared environment were factored in, the link disappeared. In fact, researchers found something else. Parents with their own neurodevelopmental or psychiatric conditions were more likely to use acetaminophen, and their children were more likely to be diagnosed with autism or ADHD because of genetics, not the medication. So what do experts say now? The FDA in 2025 added cautious wording to labels, mentioning a possible link. But they stressed, causation has not been established. The World Health Organization agrees, stating that no consistent association has been found in large studies. And researchers at Yale summarized it clearly. There is no proven causal relationship between acetaminophen use and autism. The consensus: acetaminophen remains the safest fever and pain reliever during pregnancy and childhood, when used properly. So why, even after all this evidence, do myths about vaccines and medicines continue? Because timing tricks us. Autism signs appear between 12 and 24 months. Vaccines are given at 12 to 15 months. Babies get fevers, and parents give Tylenol. The overlap feels like cause and effect. But science reminds us, correlation is not causation. Think of ice cream sales and drowning deaths. Both rise in summer. One doesn't cause the other. The hidden factor is hot weather. Add confirmation bias, and myths grow stronger. Parents remember the child whose autism signs came after a vaccine, but forget the many who developed autism without any recent vaccine. And the rise in diagnoses, that's due to expanded criteria and better awareness, not a sudden new environmental cause. But once fear spreads on social media, it can outpace science. So here's the truth. The one backed by millions of data points and endorsed by every major health authority. Vaccines do not cause autism. Paracetamol, when used correctly, is safe. And autism is not your fault. It is a complex condition shaped by genetics and many factors that begin before birth. That means you don't have to choose between protecting your child from deadly diseases and worrying about autism. Vaccines save lives. Tylenol relieves pain and fever. The best step you can take is to talk to your pediatrician. Trust reliable sources like the CDC and WHO. And use these tools as they were meant to be used to care for your child. Because here's the final twist. The myths are powerful, but the truth is stronger. And then when it comes to our kids, they deserve nothing less than the truth. If this video helped you, please hit like, tap subscribe, and turn on the bell for future answers to your most pressing parenting questions. And we'd love to hear from you. Do these findings change the way you see vaccines or Tylenol? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Together, let's replace fear with facts and give our kids the confidence and care they deserve.